In the legendary city of Mycenae, the birth of a prince was marked during an era when splendor and authority dominated his domain. Agamemnon, the scion of Atreus and Aerope, grew up in the shadow of his father, an admired and insightful monarch. As a child, he was noted for his courage and mental acuity. Agamemnon was trained in the disciplines of war and government, mastering both diplomacy and swordsmanship. The learned centaur scholar Chiron taught him combat tactics and leadership skills, preparing him to be an outstanding ruler. As Agamemnon grew, the splendor of Mycenae became more palpable. Atreus, his father, ruled pretty and firmly, and Agamemnon was poised to take his place, leading his people with honor and prudence. However, the history of Mycenae was also tinged with family misfortunes and conflicts. The feud with his uncle Aegisthus triggered a dark chapter in Agamemnon's life. Atreus exiled Aegisthus after a bitter quarrel, which would cast a shadow over his son's future reign. When Agamemnon ascended the throne of Mycenae, his authority and leadership became evident. He was a revered king throughout the region, spreading his reputation throughout Greece. However, with power also came challenges. Throughout his reign, Agamemnon established himself as a formidable and revered king throughout Greece. His influence extended far beyond Mycenae, and he was a highly regarded political leader in the Hellas. Kings and leaders of other polis sought his advice and alliance, and his opinion was vital in the peninsula's affairs. His government was characterized by being fair and balanced. He encouraged trade and economic development, contributing to the growth of the city and the region. His decision-making acumen and his ability to resolve internal conflicts ensured the prosperity and stability of Mycenae under his rule. However, along with power and prestige, Agamemnon faced challenges that tested his leadership ability. Navigating the complex terrain of politics and competitions between city-states was daunting and required finesse. Agamemnon had to balance alliances with other kingdoms, ensure internal harmony, and deal with foreign threats. As monarch of an influential city, Agamemnon also had to manage considerable expectations and responsibilities. The inhabitants of Mycenae placed their trust in him to safeguard their interests and ensure the kingdom's stability. Every decision he made could influence the lives of countless people, and the burden of making wise choices was significant. During periods of calm, he led his people while preparing to defend Mycenae in the face of potential conflict. Greek kings had to remain vigilant against possible dangers in the region. Agamemnon was ready to protect his city and allies if tranquility was compromised. In addition, as king of Mycenae and brother of Menelaus, Agamemnon played a crucial role in the Trojan War, a renowned conflict in Greek mythology. His contribution was vital to the Greek alliance to recover Helen, wife of Menelaus, whom the Trojan prince Paris had kidnapped. When Menelaus asked Agamemnon for support to gather the Greek kings and warriors for the expedition to Troy, he responded firmly. He summoned Greece's most prominent heroes and leaders, creating a robust alliance to save Helen and avenge the outrage on Menelaus. Agamemnon assumed command of the Greek fleet and led thousands of warriors to Troy. The outstanding heroes who accompanied him were the brave Achilles, the wily Odysseus, the fearless Diomedes, and others. Following the departure of the Greek fleet to Troy to retrieve Helen, the sea winds became adverse, impeding their advance from Alide, a port near Mycenae. Agamemnon, leader of the fleet, was distressed in search of a solution. Calchas, a seer and priest, informed him that Artemis, goddess of the hunt and protector of wildlife, was angry with him and the Greeks over the death of a sacred hind at the hands of Agamemnon. Calchas suggested that Agamemnon sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia to calm her anger and gain favorable winds. Agamemnon, faced with the dilemma of losing his daughter or failing in his mission, opted for the sacrifice to ensure the expedition's success in Troy. Iphigenia was taken to the altar at Alide, ignorant of her fate. This act deeply marked Agamemnon, who lived tormented by the guilt and pain of losing his beloved daughter. Long afterward, during the protracted and challenging Trojan War, Agamemnon stood out as a courageous and tactical leader. His ability as a military commander was essential to keep the Greek alliance cohesive and to face the attacks of the Trojans, who defended their fortifications with great ardor. However, Agamemnon had friction with other Greek leaders, including Achilles, generating friction and disagreements within the alliance. One of the most notorious and crucial episodes in which Agamemnon played a prominent role was his conflict with Achilles in the 10th year of the war. Agamemnon provoked Achilles' fury by taking Briseis, a young Trojan girl whom Achilles considered his spoils of battle, as a prisoner. Achilles withdrew from combat, depriving the Greeks of their best warrior. Achilles' withdrawal put the Greeks in an unfavorable position, and they suffered defeats against the Trojans, commanded by Hector, the Trojan prince. Agamemnon had to face the repercussions of his actions and seek a way to reintegrate Achilles into the fight. After several tragic events and the death of Achilles' close friend Patroclus, Achilles decided to return to the battle to avenge his friend. Agamemnon and Achilles resolved their differences, and together they led the Greeks in a final attack on Troy. In the famous decisive battle, Agamemnon led the assault on the Trojan walls. With great bravery and ferocity, the Greeks managed to enter the Trojan fortress and unleash devastation. The Trojan War ended with the city's fall, but at a significant cost to all involved. Agamemnon's performance in the Trojan War stood as an example of bravery and leadership, but also reflected the complexities and tragedies faced by heroes and leaders in Greek myths. His role in the battle was decisive for the Greek triumph, but he also experienced conflicts and challenges that would mark his life and legacy. Agamemnon's return to Greece after the fall of Troy was marked by tragedy and complexity, as was his participation in the war. After the triumph at Troy, Agamemnon returned victorious to Mycenae but encountered new problems. His wife, Clytemnestra, was waiting for him with her lover, Aegisthus, and they both planned to avenge the king. During his absence, Clytemnestra felt abandoned and belittled, and her anger was aggravated when Agamemnon sacrificed her daughter Iphigenia. The loss of her daughter was an unbearable pain for Clytemnestra, and her rage increased as time passed. The people and their son Orestes received Agamemnon with joy, but Clytemnestra, his wife, hid her genuine emotion behind a feigned smile, secretly plotting her betrayal. The heroic Achaean monarch, leader of the Greek fleet in the Trojan War, was returning victorious after a 10-year siege of Troy. His home, far from being a haven of joy, hid dark secrets and betrayals. Clytemnestra greeted him at the door with a forced smile and eyes that exuded hatred and a desire for revenge. Food aromas filled the air during the welcoming banquet, while Agamemnon and his men enjoyed themselves, unaware of the danger lurking. The walls echoed with music and laughter, but Clytemnestra could only hear her heart beating loudly. As the night progressed and the shadows thickened, a menacing silence pervaded the palace. The guests withdrew, and Agamemnon slept, unaware of what awaited him. In the darkness, Clytemnestra approached stealthily, steadfast as a panther on the prowl. Her eyes flashed malice as she wielded a dagger, reflecting her desire for vengeance. Aegisthus, as dark and silent as night, stood beside her, ready to execute his plan. With a firm step, Clytemnestra entered Agamemnon's room and beheld him asleep. An instant of doubt crossed her face, but the accumulated anger prevailed. Aegisthus stirred her to action, reminding her of the sacrifice of Iphigenia and the distance caused by the war. With a choked cry, Clytemnestra stabbed Agamemnon, who awoke surprised and confused. The betrayal was sharper than any sword. Blood stained the sheets red, and the king's last breath escaped his lips. His eyes, once full of courage and wisdom, were extinguished. Clytemnestra stood over his body, her gaze a mixture of triumph and grief. The news of the assassination dispersed, becoming a sad echo of the tragedies hidden in power and ambition. The king, fallen by human passions, left an irreplaceable void. His reign was glorious, but personal tragedies marked him. The sacrifice of Iphigenia and the betrayal of Clytemnestra weighed on his heart, reminding him that, beyond his power, he was human, with weaknesses and tragedies of his own. After the demise of Mycenae, the kingdom was plunged into deep mourning. Orestes, his son, overwhelmed by grief and longing to avenge his father, took the reins of the kingdom. However, the shadow of his revenge was cast over him, feeling the impact of his inheritance. The story of Agamemnon became a legend passed down through the generations, serving as a reminder to future generations of the dangers of excessive pride and unbridled ambition. The acts of sacrificing Iphigenia and the betrayal of Clytemnestra became examples of the tragedies that can occur in the struggle for power and fame. Over the centuries, Agamemnon was mentioned alongside other great heroes and leaders of Greek mythology, such as Achilles and Odysseus, although his legacy was more complex. He was remembered as a bold king, a wise leader, and a man whose choices had tragic and painful results. Although his life ended treacherously, Agamemnon's name would live on forever in the stories and myths of ancient Greece.